Hello and welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Been looking forward to today's discussion with Kyle Kane, CMO at Nobody Studios, one of the top campaigns on Republic right now. Been excited. Kyle's got a rich history. I learn more in every discussion. Kyle, thanks for joining the show today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jason. Pleasure to be here.
100%. 100%. And again, I'm constantly fascinated by everything you've been able to do, your path to be able to get to Nobody's Studios. Thought we could kick off the conversations there.
Sure. Yeah. So former VP of Universal Music Group. So I spent most of my career crafting the taste and tone of artists and brands. Very quickly, we saw that brands were fueling the cost of a lot of the creative content. So I left Universal and started my own agency. And we started building some production facilities in New York and New Jersey, catering to the brands, creating these brand artist partnerships. We won a couple of Emmys for content creation. And then we saw the brand dollars flow out of traditional product placement, as most of the CMOs I was working with at the time, they were looking to double down on live events. They wanted to put their products and services in the hands of people that are having a good time so that those synapses start to fire when they see the logo and the messaging. So long story short, 180 South was created as a platform for artist and brand partnerships. My first client was Katy Perry. We had signed her on for brand management. Samsung was getting crushed by Beats headphones. They were losing 4% market share a month. So we had done some integration. Katy had an idea for a music video called Birthday, where she dressed up as all these different characters. And the label didn't really like it because she was in costume and, they're spending a lot of money to brand her face. So they didn't want to do it. We found a way to get her passion project done by partnering with Samsung. Long story short, sales were up 300% on the headphones. And that was really the last marketing we had to do. We did similar products with collaborations with Rihanna and Vita Coco. We did Daniel Wellington, Kylie Jenner, and so on and so forth. Fast forward about a year and a half later, we were ranked number 13 fastest growing on the Inc. 500 list, number 24 in global marketing and advertising. And I just started to do some touring, some speaking engagements, some TED Talks. And then as we got into the live event space is really where I found my opportunity, I would say, to provide the most value. We were producing work for hire for the past 10 years before this. I was doing 10 live 2-hour broadcasts for CBS, and we had produced some tentpole events around the Grammys and the Super Bowl. And we got tired of producing events for other people. So, and I'm sure your entrepreneurial audience will appreciate that, right? So we said, hey, we're going to do this ourselves. We want to produce stuff that we own. So in 2019, we raised $20 million and we started producing live events. And in 2020, surprise, no more live events. So we burned through about $20 million. We had to figure out how to pivot all this IP to metaverse and Web3 and how to create digital streams of revenue. It was certainly a testament in resilience. But this brought me to Nobody Studios because in 2019, our last event right before COVID, we produced, it's called the Mother's Ball. It was at the Jacob Javits Center in New York, which, if you guys don't know, is one of the most premier venues on the planet. And we produced an event that was a really social impact event. It was a celebration of every woman's capacity to advocate for herself and her family and her community. We raised $2 for that. We gave away $1 million to women-owned businesses. We had 3 days of panels. We had 3 Grammy Award-winning performances. I mean, it was an awesome event. But like typical events, first-year events are lost leaders for a big second year. So spend $2 million on that in December, and then surprises, everything's dead in February. So I built that company inspired by Jason Coker, who's the current business development officer at Nobody Studios, and his wife, Lola Milani. And she's a celebrity portrait photographer, but she does more than take pictures of pregnant celebrity women. She helps them to reconnect with their beauty in a time when maybe they don't feel so beautiful. So it's really great work that she did. So we were inspired to build this event. And so losing all that money with Jason, and you really get to tell a lot about a person when you experience failure.
Yes.
And so Jason and I worked hand in hand to repay every dollar to the investors and everyone that contributed to the event, pay back all the vendors. And so through that process and the trials and tribulations of going through that failure with Jason, we learned a lot about each other. And Jason was at the time building with Mark McNally, our current chief nobody. And so through that process, I got to learn Mark and learn what the team was building over there. And I was just amazed. I mean, being from the music industry, I've been blessed to have been a part of a lot of successful groups in my life. And by far, this is the most amazing group I've ever been a part of. So happy to be here.
Makes sense. And I've seen it firsthand. I've had the opportunity to meet with Mark in person, have an understanding of why the team has such strong success records. And felt like I was walking along that path with you there. VP at Universal, working and crafting the feel of these different artists. I know we've talked in depth about product placements before and different types of activations you were working on, where you're seeing success, where you weren't, and why you gravitated towards events from there, why the music industry as a whole was able to really thrive there and get artist collaborations to the next level. I wish I was part of the Mother's Ball. That sounds like a good time, especially like you said, the first one and was happening on the second one, and how things slowed down 2020 as a result, and even hearing some of the names that are involved. You mentioned Katy Perry. I feel like I've heard you mention 5 or 10 other names offline. I don't know which ones we could talk about, but I know your
Everyone.
Rolodex is
Talk about everyone.
we met a few weeks back by LAX, and you told me the list of your meetings for the rest of the day, and I was honored to be part of such a list, just to share transparently. But that is the caliber of who I who I expect was attending these events, who I've seen coming to life on the Nobody Studios campaigns directly. So hearing about that fills in a lot of the pieces. And I know the TED Talk was a big thing, the Inc. 500, all these different accolades. Just a glimpse as well too. Really says a lot about what you're mentioning with Jason, and how you guys paid back investors. They say that's a true judge of characters. What happens when things are not working? I know on the marketing side of things, I'm always measuring marketing talent by when a campaign's not working.
Mm,
What does the problem solving look like? So
right.
there's a lot about you guys, the Nobody Studios team, and to just get into Nobody Studios a bit further. What is it that you guys are doing there? How many different projects are you working with today? How many projects are you looking to work with over the next 5 years? Would love to familiarize the audience a bit more on Nobody's.
Yeah, happy to. That's really my priority at the moment, for sure, and I consider this to be my last position that I'll ever have to take. So we're a venture studio. So we're taking the best of what happens in the VC world. The ability to pause, merge, kill companies, and we combine that with the best of crowdfunding, which allows us to graduate every company with an army of influencers. And it's hard enough to build one company in 5 years, right? Well, our goal is to build 100 companies in 5 years. And the way that we're doing that is through a proprietary company creation model, which we call Frugressive, which is creative, frugal, aggressive combined. So we're able to test and validate and scale companies very quickly using that model. And we've attracted some amazing people to the journey. I mean, to name a few, we've got the former CEO of Coca-Cola, CIO of American Airlines, the former head of Facebook Gaming. We've got executives from Amazon, Google, Skype, Stripe, Volkswagen. I mean, you name it, right? So these folks have come together for one reason. They decided to check their egos at the door and help to build these companies, because they know that the next great idea chances are is not going to come from someone who looks like Warren Buffett, right? It's going to come from a 12-year-old girl on her couch in New Delhi playing Minecraft right now, and she doesn't see herself in the current venture world. So part of our opportunity and our challenge is to invite everyone to the table, to bring their ideas to the table, and to make sure that we have the system in place to be able to take an idea from conception to completion without having a war chest of capital to do so. And the best way to do that we found is through influencer marketing.
So influencer marketing, being able to find the right artists, the right acquisition process there. Like you said, the next stages of artists are going to look different than what we saw in the early 2000s or 90s. Can't believe it was that far back at this point.
Data states.
But being able to test, validate, scale on what's occurring there, being able to bring the right brands in, build out 100 companies over the next 5 years. Is this strictly in the entertainment vertical? Is this going to incorporate a few other hand-selected verticals? How are you determining which spaces to play in?
Yeah, that's a great point. So obviously we can't invest in everything, but we have a strong moral compass. But obviously we are a for-profit company. So we are looking for companies that specifically have an opportunity to solve a problem in the world. All of our companies exist from a pain point typically the companies will go through our ideation process, our conceptual process, our validation process. And at that point, we've got the crowd to tell us whether or not this is a company that deserves to find its place in the world. And so, a lot of the democratization of the investment process, or at the very least, the decisions that we make with which companies we bring to market, will largely be determined by the crowd. So there is no specific industry or vertical. In fact, we're rather agnostic when it comes to that. But we want to make sure that these companies are good, that what they leave behind is a mark and a legacy that we can be proud of, because we know that the work we do while we're here largely determines the legacy that we leave when we're gone. So we want to make sure that we have those opportunities to leave that mark in a way that's going to make us proud, and it'll be one ride that you'll be happy to tell your grandkids about.
Well, you're going all in on it yourself. You said this is the last role you're going to have. Words like legacy always stand out to me because that means, hey, I've reached a point of self-actualization. My needs are met here. I'm now trying to focus on my impact and what I leave behind, what is left from here, and focusing on that type of mindset. On the investor side too, to be involved to impact investing really says a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And that's really the thesis is, we vote with our dollars, right? So if we truly believe that, there's a problem XYZ facing our generation, then why would we not spend our time, money, and energy and resources to solve them now? So that's one of the things that we're looking for from the crowd is, not only capital, but resources, ideas, experience, talent. That's one of the biggest problems that we're facing, honestly, is really being able to source passionate founders. It's one thing to address a problem, to put a solution in place, but who's going to drive that ship? And building 100 companies in 5 years, we're going to have to attract some really amazing and passionate and talented founders to our journey in order for us to be successful. So that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to share this message and sort of evangelize this to as many crowds as I can, because I know that some of this language and the words that we're using, this is going to it's going to spark the right synapses, and the right people are going to be attracted to the journey through these platforms. So thanks for giving us this opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to source passionate founders, to handpick these projects that they're innovative, they're creative in a space that's been based on that type of abstract approach, that type of entertainment space. What's going to be new or different for these audiences says a lot. I know the portfolio is built on that already and thus far. Just to speak briefly on equity crowdfunding, because you did mention that as part of the model. You mentioned the word democratizing. Why go down this route for Nobody Studios and for the 100 companies over the next 5 years? Why not close with one VC? What are you looking to say to investors, to the audiences, to the influencers that you work with to be able to open up the round to everyone?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is definitely not the easiest way, right? I mean, it's easy for us to close the capital from one VC. So we are not crowdfunding for the money. We're crowdfunding so that we can aggregate this army of influence around every company that graduates. And we can also make sure that the companies that we build are in alignment with what people actually want to see in the market. So this is a historic moment, under Reg CF, and what we're doing is allowing anyone to participate in the crowdfund, which means that no longer does it matter who your dad's last name is. If you have a family office behind you, what is your credit score? Are you accredited? What is your liquid net worth? That stuff no longer matters. You can still own a piece of the next great company. If you have $100 in your bank, right? And I spend $100 on lunch every day. I mean, my friends spend $100 on sneakers every week, and my girlfriend spends $100 on a dress that she wears once, right? Instead of that, owning a piece of the next great company in perpetuity, and even more, owning a piece of every company we create. That's the message that we're bringing to market. And that's why the crowdfund piece is important to us, because normally these people might not have a vehicle to bring their ideas to fruition. And I mean, look at some of the creators we're working with from around the world, right? They're traveling the world. They see things that could be better. They see things that they want to improve on. They want their ideas to find a place in the world, but they don't always have the time, the money, the resources, the team, the knowledge, the acumen to turn those ideas into profitable businesses. So unfortunately, some of the great thinkers in the world, because they don't see themselves as a venture investor, their ideas are going to collect dust in their notebook or on a hard drive. Instead, what we're offering is the opportunity to plug that idea into a system of seasoned entrepreneurs that can scale it quickly, validate it, and if it's valid, we'll scale it. And if not, we'll kill it and we'll reassign the team to the next idea. We can't do that in the traditional VC model. The traditional VC model is very passive. So that's one of the reasons why we chose crowdfund. Long answer to a short question.
I could feel the excitement behind it, the energy, and that's exactly what I wanted to point out to the audience. Your test, validate, scale sounds similar to test, optimize, scale in the marketing side, but test, validate, scale. Hey, we're launching this. We got the dreamers, we got the thinkers, we have this creativity from passionate founders. We're launching it with experts, with Mark, with Jason, with the team that has been down this road before. They know what's going to be needed at each stage. They're able to look at the different indicators to determine what continues to grow, what do we scrap, and what do we move into the next one. And you're essentially building an audience. I like to use the word army around that, so that they can all share in it financially as investors. Yes. But you think of a traditional capital raise and what are the use of proceeds? I look at one of the largest takeaways, as you mentioned, is not the capital. That audience is that's being built. That audience that can then be used towards the next round, the next promotion. They could be ambassadors towards any number, if not all of the next 100 projects over the next 5 years. So it's big. It's a big game.
That's right. And they're plugging into our idea lab. They're planting their ideas there. I mean, that's something that we are not going to be able to source from our old guard VCs in the ivory towers, right? I mean, the problems that they have are not necessarily the same problems of the people that we're trying to bring into the fold. So, that's why it's critically important that we have a well-rounded, diverse group of thinkers, and that we're inviting everyone to pull up a seat at the table, regardless of your investment history.
Absolutely. And have been watching your campaign grow. It's already one of the top ones. We're excited to be involved. But beyond that, everything you've been stating has been coming to life in terms of the influencers, the terms of the groups involved. It says a lot towards your round, but for me, really stands out more towards those 100 companies, towards Nobody Studios as a whole, and the overall growth there. What are some of the key things that you want to point out about that growth over the next 5 years? I know you said over 100 companies. I know you talked about some of the partnerships and some of the areas that you guys are going to be operating in. Is there anything else that you could share about where things are growing over the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, so we've grown 15x in the past 6 months, and we're going to grow 15x in the next 6 months, and we're going to grow 15x in the next 6 months after that, right? So the scaling of our business is inevitable, and it's directly proportional to our ability to tell our story, because telling our authentic story just naturally and organically brings the right people into the fold, and the right ideas come from the right people, and so that's sort of just snowball effect, right? So in terms of how we're bringing Nobody Studios to market, there's really 4 main points, and I've reviewed them largely so far. One is invest once, own a piece of 100 companies, right? So the young investors understand that. It's very simple to understand. I give you $100, I give you $1,000, give you $1 million, whatever it is. I have a voice in this process, and I own a piece of every company you create. Also, the savvy investors love that too, right? Because all investors are looking for diversification. So that's what we give them. 99 strikes, you still got to bite at the apple on the 100th. The second point is you're in good company. And a lot of new investors, particularly, well, even savvy investors, they want to put their money behind people that have experience. And our team has a collective experience of 5 billion in exits, 9 billion in IPOs, right? So those are the kinds of people that I'd want to put my money behind, which is why I did. And the third point being pull up a seat at the table. That's the overarching message that, now anyone can pull up a seat, regardless of your credit history or how much money you have in the bank, or if you are accredited, et cetera. And lastly, the idea lab, the innovation management process, the fact that you can now be able to take an idea from concept to completion without having the team or the knowledge or the acumen, using the power of the crowd and leveraging our team of experienced entrepreneurs. So those 4 points seem to find their way in the market. They seem to be finding the right audiences. Yep. And we're looking forward to and of course, just like the name of the show, I mean, it's about putting that message out, getting some feedback from the market, tuning it, tweaking it, and putting it back out there. And eventually, we've got this living, breathing marketing machine that's able to attract the right people with the right message at the right time.
Exactly. Right person, right message, right time. Love the points, by the way, of the diversification, being in good company. I mean, that's largely what these campaigns, largely what digital marketing is about, is seeing the social proof, seeing who else is in the pool before, joining the pool party. Tough to get that first person in the pool, but you're in good company, and pulling up a seat at the table, all around the idea lab and all around the caliber of these projects that are moving. And again, watching it all come to life with your network, with everyone in Nobody Studios network, already a standout in that regard. I mean, bigger influencers I've seen in the past week talk about you guys than many of the campaigns I've seen over the past 6 months. And I'm watching the industry like a hawk. Every Monday, we're diving into all the live 600 roughly Reg CF campaigns at any given time. So
A
again,
lot of work.
it's one thing to hear it, another thing to say it, and I mean, to see it come to life, and it's been happening.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to continue to happen. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got some major partnerships rolling out over the next couple of weeks with Finamize and New York Times and Morning Brew, and we've got another 10 or 15 massive influencers that are going to be hitting the market with our message. And we're just making sure that the messaging is interpreted by them in their own voice, and that it's going to resonate to the community because we've learned our lessons. It's not an easy thing to roll out influencer marketing. It's hard to sort through. It's hard to cut through the digital jungle. It's hard to attract the right influencers. It's hard to determine authenticity. Integrity is something that's for sale at this point, right? So if we're really going to go to message with this message of integrity and transparency and stay true to our mission, values, and guiding principles, we have to be very careful with who we allow to carry the torch. And that's not an easy thing to do in today's climate. So it's taken a little bit longer than we've expected, but we're on the right track for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Like I said, I could personally attest to it, watching it all come to life. Hearing you talk about this, Kyle, you're definitely, expert, CMO. We have a lot of founders that listen in. Thought we could package some actionable insights on your approach. Could be towards the Nobody Studios campaign as a whole, or just how you're approaching these 100 plus companies over the next 5 years. I look at marketing as a series of tests. As you said, any rollout has to be validated, and then from there it could be scaled. But what are some good things for founders, for CMOs who are listening in, that they could test towards their own model that is in line with how yourself would approach it?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting spot for me. Coming from the consumer world,
Mhm.
coming from branded content and entertainment. I'm sort of reverse. I think a lot of people go from finance the other way. I think not that many people go from entertainment to finance. And so
Sure.
I had a pretty steep learning curve over the past year or so. I mean, in the beginning, when I first came on board, it was like, all the financial jargon was like Latin or Japanese to me. It was challenging to learn. But what I decided to do was just try to drill everything down to as simple as possible. And I know the old, keep it simple, stupid, right? But that's taken many forms over the past couple of decades since that was originally coined. And now with the world moving faster than ever before, with technology advancing so quickly, with there being 5 or 10 paradigm shifts coming up in the same way that the internet changed the way we did everything. Now, I mean, look at how things are being morphed. How we bank and how we shop and how we interact with each other. All these things are changing so quickly that we understood that the current VC model was not equipped to handle that level of disruption. So what I would say to any founder or CMO is really just try to keep things as simple as possible, so that way you can go to market with something that allows you to mold based on the pain points once the market receives it. I can't tell you how many times we were so excited about a campaign, we test it internally, we hire agencies, they love it, we give them the creative, and we put it out, and it's like crickets. And so I remember the old Chevy Nova example in business school. It actually turned out to be a fallacy, but the story was that Chevy marketed the Nova to South America before they realized that Nova means no go, right? And so, that while it was proven to be a fallacy, that example always held true in my brain that, if you don't let the market tell you what they think before you start to spend money on it, you're not going to be very successful, because, what we cook up in our boardroom is very different once it hits the market. So, that's what I would say, is that no matter how complex or how out of league you might feel, being able to drill down the message to as simple as possible, get a few people together that are diverse thinkers, that are, diverse audience, your own sample size, test it, validate it internally before you decide to bring it to market and spend some money on it. It's got to be optimized for the market. And the optimization is not something that happens overnight. It's not a flip of a switch. It's something like we mentioned before. It's living and breathing. It's forever. So perfection is something that I had to let go of, which was challenging for me, being an OCD and type A, where ADHD, however many letters you want to throw on it, I've got them, right? So for me to adopt this frugressive model that Mark has instilled in us of being frugal and aggressive and creative, I get it now, but it was a challenge for me for the first year because I'm like, man, we're just going to rush this out. What about this colon? It should be a period. What about this comma? It should be a semicolon. Right? I mean, those are the little things that were bothering me. But now I realize that there's value to just getting it out. If you can second guess yourself till you're blue in the face and it'll sit on your hard drive or in your notebook, right? Like those great ideas that 12-year-old girl might have. But being able to just get it out in the market, having a pathway to put it out, get some feedback, I think that's more valuable than making sure it's perfect, is making sure that it's aggressive. And if you're frugal and creative with the way that you bring it to market, you don't have to worry about being perfect because you have another swing at the bat right after this.
Yeah. And exactly. Sometimes done is better than perfect. I can't emphasize enough that keeping it simple comment. I have a friend, Ryan Folan, with the 313 method. He's had a TEDx talk around where you break what you do down into 3 sentences, you combine that into 1 sentence, break it down into 3 words. People can remember 3 words. People can remember a simple concept. And I'm looking for, as a marketer, my audience to absorb messaging to the point where they not only understand it, but they're able to repeat it. They're able to be that ambassador. They're able to be that peer-to-peer marketer to those around them. If it's not simple, just goes right past them. So being able to break it down to as simple as possible. I like that the older adage you were mentioning, dumb it down, simple it down. I like that approach, as you're saying here, because it really has to be to that level. And then even at that point, there's assumption and then there's data. So being in the boardroom, as you're mentioning, look to conduct the right tests so that you feel as strong as possible before taking it to market. And then even in the early stages of the market, really look for those validations, look for South America, Central America, wherever you're targeting, to physically tell you with numbers that it's working, not just congratulate yourself on how great it sounds, but having the data direct where to go from there.
Well, let me ask you a question, Jason. I mean, you are
Please.
the expert thought leader in this space, right? We're about to engage and put our chips behind you and your agency for this. We have a complicated message. Oftentimes the people we're talking to, they may not even understand crowdfunding. They certainly don't understand venture studio, right? And so we've got 4 or 5 new concepts that we're bringing to market all at once. So how do you coach your clients on how not to saturate the market or confuse the market and really drill down 4 or 5 concepts into something that is simple and digestible?
Sure. I use a lot of offline, online analogies, comparisons, because to me, online, and that's where we really are active, is on the digital side of things. It's just the same social dynamics, but at much larger scale. So instead of thinking, hey, we need to pitch this in a completely different way online, what would work offline? There's all these party analogies. You run into someone at a party. Do you spit 4 ideas at once, 4 ideas at them at once? Or do you say, hey, my name's Jason. Look to communicate with eye contact, with firm handshake, and then address it and show what you're looking to communicate through your next question or what you share about yourself. As you get through a few back and forths, you can have the appropriate listening, the proper listening to deliver 4 strong points. You can talk about 4 companies, potentially 1 at a time, even at that stage. But it's a matter of getting enough attention with the initial messaging to warrant a click through, to get a better sense of listening on a landing page. Maybe the request for a lead magnet, a document, a call, something that gets them to give you that information. That then they get to an offering page. Now you have their listening and could go into those 4 points where I'll see a long paragraph of a first message at times and just think, oh, you're going to lose the audience the first sentence. You're not even going to get them in to hear about option number 3. There's other ways to accomplish it visually where you can get into further depth. You could draw attention in with the headline and then through the visuals communicate 4 points. But I try to look at even just some the word manners comes to mind, but digital messaging can be very one-sided, where if it is one-sided, it should be about the other side. Where are they consuming the content? What's going to be of interest to them at the moment? It's about them. How are you speaking to them versus just focusing on getting your points out? The same as if you're at a party, how are you creating a warm discussion versus just selling yourself and telling the four ideas?
Yeah, I love that metaphor, and and it's a challenge too because right, in person, offline, as you say, it's about active listening, right? But online, you've got to probe them so that you have something to listen to, right? So to your point, it's like it almost seems to be one of two things. It's either they trust you enough to listen to what you have to say next, or you're entertaining them enough to keep them there so you have another chance to say something next, or a combination of the two. But
Yep.
it's hard to build trust, right, without bringing them in first. So that becomes a challenge, and I think that's why guys like you and I are relevant today. If this was easy,
Try
we'd
to
be,
be.
yeah. If this was easy, we'd be selling hot dogs at Yankee Stadium. So
Absolutely. Which doesn't sound so bad some days. Which
actually, now that I
Yankees
think about
game,
it,
even as a Dodgers fan, that sounds nice. But no, there's not one black and white model to marketing. There's not one black and white model to, hey, do it this way. It's going to work. You're going to see performance versus test this out. Look to see where you're getting the responses. Look to scale it from there. I know it's all encompassing with the title, the test optimized scale, but that really is it. If you look at several variants and how you're going to get the best response from those four different message points, and then you don't lose them. I'd rather get an email sign up but at a higher conversion rate than a very small conversion rate on an investment, because I'm going to lose that whole other audience, and I could get a stronger, conversion rate of the investment at the end as a result.
yeah, today's marketer, to be successful, you have to be part artist and part scientist, right? And I feel like I fall more on the spectrum of the artist. And it sounds like, based on the name of this podcast and understanding your strengths and expertise, that you might fall slightly on the side of the scientist, right? And so this is the key. I mean, you have to have these elements. You have to be able to be analytical and test data and test data points,
Yeah,
and identify variables and isolate them, right, and be able to test and measure. But also, you have to be a good storyteller, and you have to have compelling content that's really going to allow people to emote and hit those synapses so that they fire in a way that's going to lead the consumer to the desired result. So yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely well said. And I love your metaphors. I'm actually going to borrow that one if you don't mind. I don't know if you got a
Please.
trademark, if I need to.
No. Please. It's all about relating the material in general. So I know social dynamics are something that people have somewhat of an understanding of, in the sense of, yeah, if someone said that to me at a party, I wouldn't pay attention to their next words. So I like starting the discussion there, but it could be anywhere. And if anything, you set up the right sets of tests, the right variants, the right questions that you want to get the answers from. But the big thing to me is optimization. Not everything works right out of the gate. And when
Facts.
it does, a marketer can look like a hero. Meanwhile, I really measure marketing talent by what happens when it's not working.
Perfect
What does
word.
problem solving look like? And whether it is, and you're just taking it to higher levels, because we know that's the game, is let's get it up to scale, or whether it's not. I've had campaigns that a few weeks in showed little to no performance, and by week 6, we're surpassing all of the KPIs. Where if things were shut off a month in, it would have been a loss. That tool, that channel wouldn't have been there to scale for the brand thereafter. So, part of it's how you speak to it, but I want to get the right message out there for founders so that they don't give up. They look more towards optimization. How do I improve this? How do you guys approach optimization at Nobody's Studios? Where does your lens, your perspective go in terms of optimizing?
Well, one of the biggest challenges that we have, and this is probably one of the most critical components to any marketing campaign, is attribution, right? I mean, if you don't
Yeah.
know what's working and what's not. How can you reinvest on the good stuff and pull back on the bad stuff?
Right.
So the attribution becomes the key. You got to have the mechanisms in place to measure. If you don't have that, you're just shooting at, a moving target, right? So that's the first step. And then, secondly is once the mechanics are in place to measure, it's, being strategic with how you're rolling things out. I mean, if I roll out 10 different promotions on the same platform, am I going to really be able to tell with any degree of accuracy which of those moved the needle for us and which didn't? So, that's where the scientist part of the marketer has to come in and say, okay, we need to do this one at a time. We need to isolate these variables so that we know what's working, so we know what's not, so we know where to reinvest our next dollars. And then in terms of optimization, that comes back from the market, right? So the market will tell you, hey, 100 people clicked on this and not one converted. Well, then maybe we need to take a look at first, was the traffic qualified? Yes, it was. Second, all the links were firing right? All the pixels were firing right. So we got the measurement through. We could follow that person from the first click all the way through to the page, but they didn't convert. So that tells me as a marketer, okay, we missed the mark on the messaging, right? We've got the right person in the right seat, at the right screen, at the right time, but we didn't hit the mark. And in some cases, it's the opposite, right? We're getting a ton of people and the messaging has tested. We A/B tested. We know this message works well, but for some reason, they're not converting. And so that could be any number of reasons, right? Maybe it's the wrong traffic. Maybe it's the wrong time. Maybe there's something else involved here mechanically or tactically that's stopping this attribution from happening. So, I'm sure that's the kind of stuff that you talk about all the time on your podcast. So there's probably more qualified people than me to talk about that. But I would say that, the optimization becomes your bread and butter. I mean, that is the living, breathing method of which us marketers determine whether what we're doing is working or not.
Absolutely. And I think you're being modest. It all comes down to the attribution, how you're tracking. Sometimes things need to be creative, but somewhat dependable. For me on the analytics, they don't give trophies out for what your Google Analytics report looks like. I'm not into vanity metrics and saying, hey, we did 10x returns. It's us. All I want from the analytics is to know what to do more of, exactly as you said, the next week, and what to phase out, again, as you're pointing at. And if I can make actions that improve the results twice as much next week, so we're doing it at X, we're doing it at 2x the next week, hey, I'm getting what I need off the analytics. I've seen some groups turn away from different channels because they weren't getting the exact attribution. You could look at longer funnels and get a better sense at times. But that gets to your larger point is, however you're getting the data, whatever you're using to track, whatever your measuring tape looks like, make sure you're putting time in to assess, make sure you're determining what's most meaningful towards the campaign as a result, to determine what you ramp up, to determine what you phase out, to determine what you improve. So, I mean, it's the exact science you mentioned it there. I think some individuals, some groups overcomplicate it at times. They try to be perfect and it doesn't get done. Back to what you were saying earlier, it's all a matter of what changes that you make, the impact that those have. Years have been working. Even just hearing you talk about, hey, we're doing product placements. This is what we found here. We moved to events. This is what we found here. Now we're over here with these influencers interactions. I mean, you're clearly good at what you're doing in terms of optimizing. What about scale? Once you find that winning scenario, once you crack the code, what have been the keys to scale for you? What are the main approaches that nobody wants to have in scaling these companies?
Well, everything that we do has to be scalable. So any
Yes.
new campaign, any new idea, any new vendor we bring on board, if it works for the studio, it has to be extrapolated to our portfolio companies. That's really the only way that we can scale efficiently. Mark calls them building block companies, right? So our first acquisition was ThoughtForma, which was a low-code, no-code platform. We acquired ThoughtForma, then we built Ovations on the back of ThoughtForma. And Ovations was one of the first companies that we brought to market, which is a virtual speaking gig platform. So So, you can just see how not only vertically integrated, but literally how every single service has to extrapolate across the portfolio goes. The next building block, which we're going to announce over the next week or so, is another acquisition that we brought in to help us to amplify the intellectual property, help us to handle the innovation management, help us to really make sure that our companies are creating products that that fill an actual need in the world. So the scale part is interesting because, from a predictive accounting standpoint, once you know that your dollar brings back $1.10, you measure that to your projections. Well, we thought it was going to bring back $1.60. And I think that's where you find where some marketers get caught up. Well, it brought back $1.10 and we wanted $1.60. Maybe we should move another direction. And I would urge that's not the case, that even if you're getting a 1-to-1 return, that it's still worth optimizing. It's worth taking a look at it and say, okay, we spent $50,000, we got 50,000 back. Now, how can we make sure that channel goes 1.5x, 2x, 2.5x, to your point, right? We want to see that steady increase, right, in return. So I would argue to say that, as long as you're not losing money, that it's worth the optimization step. That once you optimize, you see the return, and you measure how much you want to scale off each one based on your input, right? Because you have projections based on each marketing channel, you have your return on ad spend based on each marketing channel. So at that point, you fit your reinvestment into the scale, you fit that with your return profile.
Love it. I see so many groups hesitate saying, hey, it needs to be 10x when it can mature into that. If you're
Right.
looking at what's moving the needle, if you're looking at what's showing a positive return, what's worthwhile, and then averaging out the amount of conversions, the amount of partners, the amount of investors, whatever it is that's being produced, is coming in. Someone will naturally come in larger levels. There'll be peer-to-peer marketing occurring from there. So to me, that's a very healthy recommendation towards overall growth.
Yeah, I agree.
And like you said, everything has to be scalable. That is what has the books, has the numbers, has the valuation growing year after year. Whether you're talking about Nobody's Studios, whether you're talking about any number of the 100 companies. So I like the activity. I like what's going on there. Feel like I could keep talking to you for a while. I know we dove into travel stories last time. I think there was a submarine as part of one of them. Don't know how deep to go today. But as we begin to wrap things, are there any final notes, any final thoughts that you want to leave listeners with?
Well, I mean, there's 100, right? Especially because it's an entrepreneurial crew, and I always love talking to my fellow entrepreneurs because they understand the ebb and flow of the entrepreneurial spirit in a way that, I think most of the general public does not understand. And so, I would just say that, what we're doing right now in terms of Nobody Studios is just the tip of the iceberg. The fact that we're building a venture studio is really just so that we have the vehicle to impact change. So, I would just want to inspire everyone to take a look at what we're doing and to reach out to me directly. You can reach out to me at Kyle, Kyle, at nobodystudios.com, and let me know how you'd like to participate. It's really one of three ways that we're looking for. One is, of course, your talent. A lot of folks are looking to create new career tracks, or they're looking to, tax more of their value. I think we want to provide what we've been given. We want to use our skills and our blessings and our knowledge and experience. We want to apply it to the world. So anyone who feels like they're not using their full skill, come on board. We've got plenty of work. Secondly is resources, right? We need as many resources as possible so our message will reach its intended audience. And the best way to do that is through co-marketing partnerships, high visibility opportunities for marketing assets. So, anything around the realm of resources that for us to drive traffic to our campaign page is totally welcome. And then lastly, third, and probably the easiest way is that we have a live and active campaign right now on Republic. So you can go to republic.com/nobodystudios. And for as little as $100, you can own a piece of every company we create. So those are the three easiest ways to get involved. And I look forward to discussing any of them with any of your awesome audience here.
Talent, research, partnership as an investor. Kyle, nobodystudios.com. Definitely recommend people reach out and get everything connected there. Kyle, enjoyed the conversation immensely. Thank you so much for taking the time to hop on here. I know I've been taking notes, hoping listeners got some nuggets out of that as well too, and look forward to doing more together in the future.
Me too. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.